Hello everyone, welcome to our talk show. And today we still have Robert King here to say something about mold. And we know, Robert, you are a really experienced home inspector and mold inspector. So mold is bad for us. And say something about it, how it is bad for us.
Well, just being exposed to mold itself, depending on the type of mold it is, whether it's toxic or non-toxic, it can go ahead and have an adverse effect on your system. So everybody's bodies are different, and and you have a mold that's in the actual area, if two people are exposed to it, we may react differently to it, right? But what's really important here is that if you can find out why or how mold has come about, then you can clean up the source so you can prevent it from happening again.
Okay.
Right, so just a little bit of background about mold. Mold occurs when you have moisture feeding organic materials such as cardboard, paper, cotton, right? So moisture is feeding organic materials in an unventilated area. Mold will develop within 48 hours, right? And what type of mold it is, I couldn't tell you. It really depends on the environment, but what you need to do that's very important is to have it tested.
Okay, have it tested. So mold is really dangerous for us, and for the buyers or sellers, when you hear there's mold in the house, it's really a big thing. So where you can most likely to find mold in our houses?
That's a great question. The house itself, you can find mold pretty well anywhere, right? The rule of thumb, though, is wherever moisture will be. So if that's condensation, say in your closets, right? Again, moisture getting in condensation developing in your closets, and there's no ventilation in your closets, and there's organic materials such as your clothing. Wherever there's a watered line or a drain pipe, right? Mold can develop in those areas too. Again, water leaks, sitting in an unventilated area, say underneath your cabinetry, and because there's no ventilation, mold develops, right? You can even take a look in the bathroom areas, and this is something that happens with just about everybody I've come across, right? Is that when you take a shower, you're getting rid of your dead skin cells. That is organic material too. And what happens is that if you don't have a window open, or you don't have a bathroom fan vent on, and it doesn't dry out the area, then what happens? Mold will develop too. Another place is inside your attic area. Right? And if you don't have enough ventilation inside your attic, then mold can develop. As moisture condensation develops in there, or a leak through your roof, and it sits on the actual wood sheathing or any of the wood materials inside there, mold will develop in those areas too when we do not have ample ventilation.
And when you find the mold in your house, how to deal with that?
Oh, very good. So if you had expansive amount of mold, so anything that's greater than a foot, then there's a good chance that you'll need to have it tested, and that will help determine how it's to be removed. And a lot of times, or not, when it's more than a foot and it's expensive, likely you'll have to bring in a mold removal team in there. If it's less than a foot, then you probably can take care of it by picking up an antimicrobial mold solution inside the Home Depots or your home hardwares, and it's called Concrobium or Benefect. And these household products, you can actually clean it. But a lot of times when it's greater than a foot, you need to bring in someone to actually remove that. But you know what though, Fisher, the most important part of mold is that why did it happen? And
why did it happen? Not only just remove.
You don't want it to happen again. So you can have it clean, but you need to find out why it happened again. So that's really important, where hiring a home and mold inspector like us in our company, we're able, because we wear two hats, we can actually help determine how things happen.
So find how it happened is most important things, right?
Well, it absolutely is most important. If you have mold, you need to have it removed, but then you need to find out why it happened.
Okay. Do you have any more information about mold?
Oh, what I can tell you this is I compare mold to the animal bear. Bear. And the reason why I say this, when bears hibernate in the winter, they're asleep. Well, in the winter, mold is like the bear. It also sleeps as well.
Wow.
Because you're dealing with, in the winter, you're dealing with a dry environment.
Yes.
Right? So what happens is that mold doesn't flourish in dry environments. Remember I was mentioning about how when it's wet, while in the winter it's dry, there is no moisture. But when it gets wet during the springtime, when the bear and the mold wake up, then and there's a lot of moisture, then mold will develop at that time. Another thing that's really important to you is I mentioned about non-toxic and toxic mold. If you were to look up black mold inside, on the internet, you'll see the word Stachybotrys. If you're exposed to Stachybotrys, if we do testing and we find that, we highly recommend that you're not living in that environment until you get everything cleaned up, because that can have effect on your neurological system, on your respiratory. It will just it will actually affect your organs within your body. And if that happens, then you have some serious health issues.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. Okay, so that's all about mold. If you want to get more information about mold, go to our website.
Yeah, the website is superiorhomeinspectors with an S on the end.ca. And if you want to send an email to me, you can send an email to info@superiorhomeinspectors.ca.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.